Where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is the fourth Thursday of the month, which means it's time for Vegan Conversations with Robert Cheek. And before I introduce him and he introduced his guest this month, I want to tell you about a wonderful new book that is coming out in June, written by none other than New York Times bestselling author of The Plant-Based Athlete, Robert Cheek. I'm sure he'll tell you all about his book, and welcome him back to the show. Robert, you're a machine with writing books.
Well, I don't know that I'd say I'm a machine, but I'm certainly enthusiastic about it. And maybe I'm pretty stubborn. And so that's just what I know how to do. And so I just keep doing it. I'm not really good at a lot of other things. And that's one thing that I think I'm really great at. So that's what I do.
Nice. Well, I wish you every success. And I'm sure we're going to have an episode in the future dedicated just to the book. But today you have a special guest.
Yeah, I sure do. Chef AJ, thanks so much for having me back again on Vegan Conversations with Robert Cheek. And today I've got Beth Olson, the founder of MBO Media. She is a publicist and media expert and has worked with all kinds of interesting clients, getting them large-scale media exposure, which is something that I'm excited personally to learn about because I want to answer that fundamental question that I have in my head, Beth, which is, why is marketing so hard? So Beth Olson, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've been in touch for some months now. In fact, for the audience tuning in live and for those watching the recording later on, you'll know that, now you will know that my most recent guest, multiple recent guests, came from your recommendation. You're the one that got those guests booked on this show, and now here you are on the show yourself. And so I want to learn about the publicity industry, the marketing industry. But first, I want to hear your vegan origin story. Like, what brought you into this space and why does veganism mean so much to you?
So when I was younger, I worked and lived in New York City, and we were part of the company that launched Victoria's Secret Pink. So I always half jokingly say, we're the ones who put pink on teenagers' butts, right? The word pink on the sweatpants. And I also did celebrity PR and did fragrance PR for major celebs like Halle Berry and Beyonce and the Beckhams. And it started weighing on me a little bit just because I felt like I was making a lot of great moves in my professional career, but I also felt like there was a gap in terms of the kind of clientele that I was representing and also the cause. So a lot of that was exciting and it gave me great experience, but I feel like it wasn't the best fit for who I was and who I was evolving into. So I'm from the Washington D.C. area, and I moved back home and had done some different jobs, and all of a sudden just got into this rabbit hole. It was right before I was pregnant with my son, who is now going to be 9 this summer. And it's like so many other vegans. I'm a self-proclaimed animal lover, tried to be vegetarian when I was in 4th grade, but I'm 44 years old. And the doctor back then had said something like, you're not going to get your protein. You can't do it. It's not going to work. And so there I was. It was a 6-month stint, and my parents trusted the doctor, and that's what we do. So I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube, and I watched a bunch of videos, and I watched a bunch of documentaries, and I just started feeling like I need to do something that's going to help animals who can't protect themselves. I need to do something that's going to be beneficial and fulfilling to myself, because if it's not fulfilling, I'm not going to do a good job. And I wanted to do something that made a difference, and I wanted to work in what I'm calling mission-based PR. So I had watched a video, and there was a cow, I think it was in Spain. It was a rusty old dirty slaughterhouse, and the cow was going one way, and it was not very gruesome. It was not, some of the other videos that I've watched, especially working in-house for Animal Outlook, which I did in the beginning of my animal advocacy exploration, is really bad, undercover videos and things like that. But this was such a simple moment, but it was so profound, and it had such a life-changing effect on me. I just watched that cow trying to turn around and just being whipped behind from a worker. And I just couldn't. I couldn't watch it anymore. I couldn't stomach the fact that this is what it's like. And it was benign. It was benign in comparison to all the different things. So I was like, I'm going vegan. I'm doing it. This is happening. I reached out to a woman, Erica Meyer, who was the executive director of Compassion Over Killing at the time. And I said, I've never worked in animal advocacy. I have a PR background. I know I can do something to help. Can you please hire me? And so she did. So it was awesome. And it was a time where the organization was going through a lot of change. We know how nonprofits can be. There's always a lot of ups and downs. But what I was able to do when I worked there was really the stepping stone for MBO Media and why I created the agency. So we had undercover investigations that were covered by the New York Times. We had a Tyson investigation that was covered by USA Today. That was my job, right? Exposing the horrors that this poor investigator had to experience and getting that out in the news. So that's the vegan journey. And here we are today.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Mary Beth, and you have a clearly defined why. You have your why, I have my why. I was just on stage in Seattle a few days ago. I started my presentation by asking the audience, why are you here? Why did you come to this event? What do you hope to get out of it? And then I asked, if you're vegan, why are you vegan? And to not just, to help animals, help the planet, healthy food, whatever, these kind of superficial layer things that we just kind of throw out there, but like tell me your story. Like you told me your story about that cow. I have my story, raising farmed animals and selling them to be turned into someone else's food. Like we have emotional stories. I want to kind of linger here for a moment. How important do you think that why story is for an individual as far as becoming vegan, staying vegan? We have recidivism rates that are pretty high for veganism, unfortunately. How important do you think that why story is for people to be motivated, to be inspired, to be compelled, to be driven, all these things that you wanted to do to create what you called, for you, mission-based PR? So for those who want to have a more mission-based or impactful vegan life, how important is that why?
I think it's everything. I think the why is the guiding light. It's the North Star, so to speak. If you don't have your why, then it's really easy to fall off, right? It's really easy to falter. It's really easy to get sidetracked. The why is everything, really. And Tracy McQuarter, the author of Ageless Vegan, a wonderful, wonderful client of mine, and Joseph Blair, who you interviewed, the MBA coach, that's something they talk about all the time. Because if you don't have your why, it has to matter. So for me, I'm very into health and fitness and just the mental elements and all of these great things that those bring about. But if I'm saying, I can't eat that because it's my health, I'm going to be honest. I have more teeth in the game. Is that what they say? I have more of an investment in the animal piece of it than I do in necessarily the health. That's not to be, it's not to say I'm eating Beyond Meat burgers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's not how it is. And there's nothing wrong with Beyond Meat burgers. But when it comes down to it, that's my why. That's my why.
Yeah, totally. I'm right there with you. I became vegan for the animals 28 and a half years ago. In fact, I'm going to go off script here for a second. Am I going to see you in DC at the Animal and Vegan Advocacy Summit in May?
Probably.
It is my favorite event of the year. Now there's amazing things like the vegan cruise and plant-based nutrition conferences and Veg Fest and all that. But the Animal and Vegan Advocacy Summit, it used to be called the Animal Rights National Conference. It was in DC, LA for 25 years. It's back in DC next month. I'll be there in like 2.5 weeks. Is that when it is? It's soon, 2.5 weeks. So I would love to see you there. It's you're surrounded by people who are vegan for the animals there, people who are attending a conference to how to learn, attending because they want to learn how to most effectively reduce animal suffering and promote veganism effectively and talk about the current state of the vegan movement, all of that. So I would love it if there's a chance to meet up with you there, right there in DC. Absolutely. It's the Hilton Hotel in Alexandria. It's been that same location for decades.
Yeah, I've been before. It is great.
Yeah. So on that note, I actually already had a note written down. You have your pulse on this movement more than most because you're in publicity, you're in marketing, you've got clients, you're in media, all this stuff. So I want to ask you, just directly, what's your perspective on the current state of the vegan movement?
So it's a really great question, Robert. And I think that as much as I'm immersed in the movement, there's also a piece of me that's not. So I can explain that in the sense that when you're working for animal nonprofit, or you're in there and you're doing protests and you're doing the work, for me, I am definitely much more on a different end. So I'm dealing with veganism and how it's represented and how I can bring that to the media in a different way. I think that Big Ag has spent millions and millions, if not billions of dollars trying to talk us out of all the foods that we like, and also trying to put their spin on things. And so a lot of what I do is I keep my head down and I focus on the exact task at hand, right? I have to focus on that, and I have to make sure that those are the messages that are being brought to the table. So in terms of the animal rights movement, as we speak of, I might not know everyone in the movement. I most definitely don't know everyone in the movement. I have a ton of different types of clients. I am around vegans and non-vegans alike, and I focus on, I know mainstream media is not a great phrase to use, but I focus on the big national, local, regional, all of that media, and a perspective that is not in that bubble, so to speak.
Yeah, it is interesting. There are some people, when I go to this major animal rights, if you want to call it, or animal vegan advocacy summit, and there's all sorts of speakers that I don't know, and presenters that I don't know,
Right.
and even nonprofit exhibitors that I don't know. And I'm like, how is this possible? I've been doing this for 3 decades now. But that's the evolution of a movement that's constantly growing. You know, I'm a little bit old school now. I may not be totally up with all the current trends. Like I used to hang out with Erica Meyer back 15 years ago, and all of that. And so it is hard to keep up with, but I'm also always curious when I get a chance to talk to someone who's involved in media, including national media, to find out how veganism is being received or portrayed or absorbed, or how people are thinking about it.
Really quickly, I think that because of things like Netflix and the Twin Study and You Are What You Eat and Game Changers and all these things, it's definitely more prevalent. And what I have seen too is on social media, people like Jamie Logan, these influencers, Jenny from the Vegan Women's Summit, these people are crushing it. And so there's this new wave, I think, of generational, beauty. They're bringing beauty in every form of the word to the industry, and their amazing perspective, and that the way that they have their why.
Absolutely. And I think they bring a lot of energy too. They bring a lot of energy to the movement. I mean, I've been on a speaking tour. This is my 20th year. And not that I don't bring energy. I try to bring lots of energy, especially to the stage at in-person events. But you also, not you, but we need new voices, new perspectives, new ideas, tech-savvy approaches, innovation, capital. We need all of these things. And, there's a lot that some of us earlier in the movement don't have in those realms. But let's transition here for a moment. I didn't say this in your bio, but in addition to being founder of MBO Media, you're also the co-founder of DC Veg Week, or DC Veg Restaurant Week. And that's coming up soon. Too bad I'm not in town until like the next week. And I can't come early. I've got another event to be at. But can you tell us about a DC Veg Restaurant Week, or DC Veg Week, whatever the official name is?
So we're calling it DC Veg Week,
okay.
But it is something that involves a ton of different restaurants. So this has been a labor of love. So we did 3 different TV segments this week. We have a ton going on for DC Veg Restaurant Week, and now I'm calling it DC Veg Restaurant Week. We have an event on May 4th, which is the VIP party. So basically, DC Veg Week takes place between the 6th to the 12th of May. This is the 3rd annual year. A fabulous activist named Max Broad. Do you know Max?
I don't think so.
Well, you need to. He's wonderful. He is the original founder. And we started talking not last year, but the year before. And there were so many ideas that were flowing. And as a PR person and someone who does events, I was like, come on, Max, we got to do this and we got to do that. And it just took over. And so last year we had 30 different restaurants who signed up, and basically all you have to do is put a vegan menu item available for the different customers if it's not a vegan restaurant, or you do some kind of vegan promotion. So for example, this year Rooted 3, it's a new restaurant in Bethesda. They'll be doing 10% off smoothies, and it's all vegan and plant-based and gluten-free and all that good stuff. So it's a way to get restaurants who are vegan and non-vegan to jump on board, come together. I mean, I always laugh. Last year I was like, why don't we get Ruth Chris's Steakhouse? Like, I want to get people who would never have thought that they could add something to the menu. Now, they did not respond to our increase. Shockingly, it wasn't necessarily what they were looking for, but it's a great event. Last year, Tracy McQuarter and Chef Spike Mendelsohn were the co-chairs. We did a big launch event at DC Vegan here in Washington, D.C. This year, we're doing, again, that VIP party at Rooted 3, and it's just going to be a week-long celebration of all things plant-based.
That's awesome. And have you collaborated with PCRM on that in the past, like Chuck Carroll and podcast about it, or?
Yes. Everyone is so supportive. And last year it was great. We were doing a IG Live, Max and myself and another one of the restaurants who was involved. And he was like, Mary Beth, will you be a co-founder? You know, I feel like I've been so involved in it since day one. And it was such a nice sentiment. It's such a great project. And so many of my friends who are not vegan, and so many of the people in my life, especially because I have 2 school-age children, I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, which also makes it hard to sometimes get to all of these different industry, events, but in terms of animal advocacy and things like that. But there's a lot of introducing, there's just a lot of people who have no idea what the background is to what they're eating. It shocks me, actually, to just still see in this day and age that people just have no clue.
Yeah. Is there any form of kind of networking that happens when people come together and collaborate for this, whether it's the restaurants that come together and are part of something similar and end up maybe supporting one another or collaborating, or you already told me you do some sort of collaborations with PCRM, and are there opportunities for customers to participate either in online discussions or kind of rank their favorite meals, or bring friends out and benefit and have some sort of social experience with it too?
100%. So we have events lined up throughout the week. If you go to vegdc.org, you can check out all those different events. If you also go to DC Veg Week on Instagram, we're pretty active there. We try to share what's going on. We have some events going on. It's all events, really. It's throughout the week, visits to restaurants. And what's beautiful is that, yes, people are able to collaborate and connect. We do meetups. And what is so cool is that so many of these restaurants end up keeping these vegan items on their menu for, indefinitely, which is so awesome.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And the reason I asked about the events and social participation is because I'm on this big tour right now. I'll be 6 events in the next 9 weekends, for example. And I just came from a whole bunch already, including last week. And it's just, there's nothing like in-person events and networking and collaborating and all of that. There's tons of online stuff, of course, and things through Zoom like we're doing today, or through Instagram Live, or through all these other channels. But I don't know if it's from a couple of years of not touring due to COVID and having been on tour for a couple decades now, but there's just something so rewarding about the in-person communication and meeting people and making friends with people you didn't know you would be friends with, and now here you are, and all of that. And so I'm excited to hear about that. And I hope there's a lot of people from DC or in the DC general area who are listening now, or who I can share this video with, who will participate. And so I'm really pleased to hear that it's an event full of events. And I want to ask you another question regarding vegan advocacy. It's clearly something that you're passionate about and hardworking and trying to get as many people to achieve that as possible. So from your perspective, Mary Beth, what's one form of vegan advocacy that anyone listening can do right now?
I've got 2 just that came into my head, but one major form is just leave animals off your plate. It's so simple, and it can be once a day. Obviously, we'd like it if it were more, but it's the act of choosing not to consume animal products. And then one other thing, if I may, is when you're going to a restaurant, don't be shy. Actually, JB, gave me this tip. Don't be shy to advocate for vegan options. Don't be shy to say, look, what do you have that's vegan? Can I talk to the chef? What is it that I can eat here? And the more demand, obviously, it's a supply and demand process. And the more of that, the more people are going to listen, because that's where, the dollars are.
Yeah,
But
I've seen that.
Animals off your plate is the number one thing. And you think it doesn't make a difference, but it makes such a big difference. And the influence and the ripple effect that creates too is so incredible. People there was just no chance of them being vegan have jumped on the bandwagon, and who are now coming to the big launch event at Rooted 3 on May 4th, and who are supporting. And I feel like it just takes time, but in doing so, you can be an example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a deeper power in requesting plant-based menu items and vegan menu items and a vegan presence on a menu that is not necessarily felt by the individual initially. For example, if you or Joseph Blair or me or someone is outspoken and requests vegan menu items and creates that demand and all of that, for every one of us, there's a lot of people who just won't speak up, right? But because if a few of us speak up, and now that reflects on the menu, how many people now in the future are going to order that plant-based or vegan menu item because it's there, that just wouldn't have before, because they didn't have the courage or the ambition to speak up or the confidence to request it. And I've seen that time and time again, where I have even single-handedly, or my wife and I have single-handedly changed the way a menu looks at a popular dining establishment because of requesting these types of food options, meeting with the manager, this kind of stuff. And what it does is it creates an opportunity for people who will patronize that place for days, weeks, months, years down the road, giving them an opportunity that it wasn't there before. And so that's where I think it's felt for a much longer period of time than just you getting what you want, animal
night,
food.
right? Yep.
Yeah, that night, that dinner, that meal.
And it's also being just really, like you said, very proactive. So, I mean, there was a restaurant that approached me and they said, "Oh, I'd love to do your services." I was like, "Then put some vegan food on that menu, and then we'll talk." You have to really encourage people to have a more expansive menu than just salads and things like that. Although I do like salad, but you got to have more.
Right. And there's something called a plant-based by default approach, or veg by default, or greener by default. I wrote about it in my new book, The Impactful Vegan, and the statistics are incredible. I'll try to summarize them. It's basically when you go to an event with a totally mainstream audience, a catered event, let's say it's some sort of banquet or function or something like that. There's only going to be a small number of people if it's a omnivorous buffet or platter or whatever. There's only going to be a small number of people who will request plant-based options, right? I don't know, 10%, something like that. But if you make the entire buffet plant-based by default, there's like only 40% or something people that will request any animal product. Therefore, there's like a 50% change there, because normally you'd get, if it's just omnivorous buffet, 90% of people are eating animals. But when it's plant-based by default, most omnivores are, I'm fine with it. It's one meal a day. I'll go with it. And so now you have half of the audience. Let's say you have 500 people or 1,000 people at the event. Now half of them are eating plant-based, where before 90% were eating animals. And so we give these numbers in the book. There's places like New York public hospitals are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just visiting a loved one in the hospital for a full week, just last week. That loved one is doing fine now, thankfully. But I hadn't been in a hospital in a while, and certainly not every day for a week. And I was reminded of just how many meals are served there for people who are in the hospital for any length of time, and how significant that is if more hospitals or universities or businesses or banks or institutions would do a plant-based by default approach. It really adds up. So I applaud you for speaking up and for helping transform menus and recognizing the long-lasting implications of that. On that note, Mary Beth, I would like to ask you, how would you describe your vegan advocacy?
I'm pretty vocal, but I'm also, like I said, I'd like to keep my head down and focus on the tasks at hand, right? I've got a lot of projects. I got a lot of moving parts. I have like so many other people, there's so many family obligations and life obligations and 2 rescued dogs and a rescued cat and the kids. I mean, just there's so much going on. I would say my advocacy is really working with plant-based brands to help get them the exposure from all different walks of life, all different people, all different culinary preferences, so to speak. It's getting them in the news. It's highlighting their delicious food. It's changing preconceptions about what vegan food looks like. It's getting influencers in the door. So a huge piece of our PR strategy, especially with the advocacy, is getting all these great food influencers who are by no means necessarily vegan focused, like DMV Eats. She's great, just hit 100,000 followers. Sakya is just a wonderful, great supporter. And she will go wherever I ask her to, and she will just embrace all of the plant-based world. And she's by no means plant-based, but getting her and her audience to see how delicious plant-based food can be is my main form of advocacy at that time, for sure. And then there's little things that might seem little to us vegans and us animal advocates, like adopt, don't buy your dog, go learn, see all the animals who could be great. They know, they love you. I mean, I've got one 70-pound dog. They told me she was going to be 38 pounds and she's now 70 something pounds. And she'll probably bark throughout this interview, but at some point, but there are things like that. And also just encouraging people. So for example, we also had a big school event. And so I went to DC Vegan and I stocked up on all their vegan cheeses from their cheese shop. And I made a vegan charcuterie board. And I was like, this is part of my advocacy. This is showing people what vegan food tastes like. Those things that, again, if I had more time, I would do more. But right now I'm just focusing on what I'm doing and trying to do it the best I can.
Well, I think you're doing a wonderful job. And what I grasped from you there was that leading by positive example is one of the best things you can do. Introducing food to people, adopting rather than buying animals, keeping animals off your plate, giving media exposure to vegans like Joseph Blair, who really wasn't on my radar until, I don't know, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And then I started seeing him get all this vegan media. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm a huge basketball fan. I'm like, massive basketball fan. I love it.
That's a great interview, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. It's like basketball is like my favorite thing. So to learn that he was vegan was so exciting for me. And to be in touch with him now and connect with him and keep in touch every now and then is really exciting. But I think what you're hitting on is that every single one of us can lead by positive example in one form or another, whether it's that influencer you mentioned with 100,000 followers and getting them to promote veganism or try vegan food and introduce them to vegan options and see how they respond to it or share that with their audiences, to working with school or introducing plant-based foods to kids to keep kids on a healthier track when we have so many problems in our country's health and healthcare system as a result of diet and lifestyle related issues coming from oftentimes the school lunch program and public school system and food that's promoted heavily and meat, dairy and eggs and all of that. And by providing some alternatives or providing some education or distributing literature or talking to people, or you mentioned documentaries earlier. And so I like that idea of leading by positive example as an effective form of advocacy. And now I would like to put you on the spot.
Oh.
And I know you're still early in your career doing this. Is very
really. I got 25 years under my belt over here, Robert.
but you're very young. You're a very young person.
Thank you.
You'll see what I mean by what I'm going to ask you here.
Okay.
Yes, I know you got 25 years under your belt and all that. But what I want to ask is, what do you most proud of in your career so far?
It's a great question. I think the first time we had a undercover investigation hit USA Today, that was a huge one. I just felt like, okay, this is awesome. And also there's little things that I'm proud of that have taken a lot of time and effort. I'm incredibly proud of seeing restaurants that we've worked with who are startups become stable and thrive. I mean, with DC Vegan, I started working with them when they were just a deli and a catering company. And now they're a deli, a catering company, an artisanal cheese shop, a botanical bar. And they're like the go-to place. Everybody loves DC Vegan. And to me, that's what's so rewarding. It definitely is a grind. It definitely takes a ton of your time, effort, and energy. But I'm the most proud of, I would say, the relationships too that I've built and that I've been able to maintain. I am a very kind of what you see is what you get kind of person. This is how I would have a work call with you. I would just talk to you like you're a normal human being. I don't fluff it up so much. I really try to keep it straight and to the point. And it's just been so rewarding watching these people who you really care about become what they want to be.
Yeah, that is fun to watch. When you're nurturing a company, an organization, an individual, and see them really blossom and grow into their own, it's pretty special. On that note, so you've been doing this for 25 years. So you're certainly not new to that, and you've been vegan for about a decade or so. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So about
9 years. Yeah.
A decade doing kind of vegan representation, publicity, media, and all that. So I want to ask you two questions. One, what is it like? You mentioned all these big names from New York City back in the day and all the big celebrity names and all that. So one, what is it like being a publicist and representing others? And number two, what does a typical day in the life look like for you?
So those are both great questions. Okay, what is it like to be a publicist? I can tell you that a lot of people, especially a couple years ago, thought of publicists as going out and having fun and going to parties and things like that. So that could be an element for sure of your job. But at the same time, you're working. So I would be in Paris doing a private concert with Celine Dion and the beauty editors from Coty, which is the fragrance house I was telling you about. And I am literally going minute by minute according to the run of show, which is the timeline, and I'm managing someone else's flight. I mean, you're managing and wearing so many hats. I started MBO Media 4.5 years ago. And I just brought on someone, and she's a publicist now on our team. Sarah, if you're out there, shout out to you. And it's incredible to just watch how much work goes into being a publicist. For every story, it takes like 15 pitches. I was laughing. I'm doing something with a client for GoodMorningAmerica.com, and I had to follow up with her 8 times. 8 times, Robert. Like that is, I call it pleasant persistence, right? I'm pleasantly persistent. It's like you throw spaghetti at the wall and you see if it sticks, but you have to have a strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, it's not going to work. And if you don't also have a strategy that you're able to pivot from, so for example, okay, sales are low in this restaurant, let's pivot more to getting more butts and seats. Here's what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z. So a typical day for me is I wake up, I go outside, I love my front yard, all the flowers have blossomed now here in the DMV. And I sit outside, and it's like my little time to have my coffee, do my sunlight thing. I'm a big advocate of getting the direct sunlight, at least, 15 minutes if you can every day. And then I go to the gym. And this is another reason why I have my own company, because I'm not a 9-to-5er, Robert. I know you're not either. I just, I got to do what I got to do, and I'll get it done. I'll get the job done. But there are certain things that I have to take care of for myself. So I go to the gym. And then I come home, and then there's calls, or sometimes there's a TV segment that's earlier in the morning. So I skip the gym and have to plan it the day before. I plan the workout the day before. Working out is like my anchor. It helps keep me focused. It helps keep me on point. It helps me. I mean, you of all people need to talk about that too, because that's such an important part of my day. But it's all phone calls. I mean, I have weekly meetings, TV segments, radio. This Saturday, I have a client on Foodie and the Beast, which is a really cool radio show. I try not to work on the weekends because it's my time with my little ones, and sometimes it just bleeds over. And so Saturday, I'm going to run a 5K, and then I'm going to shower and go home and go to the radio show. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear from other people, like like Chef AJ, like yourself, like perhaps me, others who don't have the traditional 9 to 5 and who have kind of the 24/7 in a lot of ways. So I'm going to ask you a question that came to my mind like just now, like as I'm kind of contemplating some of this right now. I'm in the midst of a book launch. As you know, my book comes out exactly 2 months from today, actually. And so it's tough to not feel overwhelmed or feel burned out. So I'm asking you personally, the audience can listen in as well, but I'm asking you to answer a question for me. So how do you avoid burnout when your work always goes home with you? Like,
Yes.
It never ends, at least in my world, and I think in probably your world and in many worlds like this. Your work follows you home everywhere you go. It's there before you go to bed and you didn't quite finish it. And it's there when you wake up and it's already waiting for you. And it's there on the weekends, and it's there when you're trying to be there with your family, and it's there when you're trying to travel, and it's there everywhere. And I have moments, and I'll say it right here on camera, I don't care. I've had moments even recently where I'm thinking like throwing in the towel, for my book launch. It's just too much to take, and it's not going the way that I want. And other things like family emergency came up, or our dog passed away recently, and all these things. Like, so how do you juggle what seems like probably a pretty hectic or stressful talk about run a show, Celine Dion and all this stuff, every minute accounted for? How do you avoid burnout?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, I am dying. I want to read your book. So you got to send me one of them. I really, really want to read it, first of all. Second of all, I hope you have a good publicist who's going to be helping you along the way. Or are you self-published? What's that about? What are you doing?
I'm published by Ben Bella, the same publisher that publishes T. Colin Campbell and Tony Akamoto and Drina Burton and a bunch of others. So it'll be a hardcover book. It's right here. Actually, your copy is shipping out soon. I actually just saw these for the first time. I have the advanced copy that Chef AJ was holding up with this little, paperback with the little sticker on it that says advanced copy. But this is the real deal. I just saw it on Friday for the first time, hardcover. So yeah, it's gonna be in every bookstore in North America, and I've got speaking tour and podcasts that I'm doing and all this kind of stuff. But it just seems to be a constant, never-ending thing. And I'm sure, like I said, your work is very much the same. Your clients always want more interviews. They want more opportunity. They want to reach bigger audiences. They want to sell more stuff. They need to be more profitable so they can grow and expand. So yeah, the main thing is, how do you juggle it all? And the burnout thing, especially, because I know I feel that. And if I feel that, I know a lot of other people must feel it too.
Oh, it looks like there's a question really quickly, but I'm going to answer that. Question from a viewer. I'm a first-time vegan author. How do I get publicity? I am not a name. They won't even talk to me. And those who will want $20,000 up front. Can a regular person get publicity without going broke, and how? Also, what do I eat in a day? Okay, so I'm going to go in order of the questions being asked. So I'm going to go with how to avoid burnout, because I think that that's so important. And I have learned, because I've completely burnt out. Not completely to the point where I'm throwing in the towel and I'm done, but it comes down to just treating yourself as gently as you can. I was drinking Diet Coke all the time, and I was staying up late, and I was doing you can't do that and be healthy and putting your health first, because if you don't have your health, there's nothing else, right? There's nothing to even discuss. Everything goes out the window. So sleep is so imperative for me. If I don't get a lot of sleep, like I had an event with JB last night in Baltimore, and I went to bed really late, and I'm like, whew, I don't know if I'm as sharp as I need to be on this interview, but sleep is so incredibly critical. It's so critical. And also boundaries, Robert. I mean, you're always going to have people who are going to reach out and who are going to want more but it's okay to say no. And I've said no to helping, I'd say maybe 4 people in the last month. And I hate saying no, but I don't have the bandwidth. So I would much rather have my handful of clients and do it really well than be all over the place and not be able to do it well. I mean, you just have to make hard choices. And that's what I've evolved to do, because I never was able to do that. I said yes to everyone. I would, go up to New York for the launch of a restaurant and drive there and pay for it myself and come back. I mean, you can't do that anymore. It's like you can't. It's a business, but it's also your passion, but you have to have boundaries.
Yeah, if I can interject quickly, because Chef AJ always calls me out on this.
Okay.
She'll text me, she'll call me, whatever, because I am a constant people pleaser. I say yes to everything. I say yes that puts me into massive debt. I mean, thousands or tens of thousands in debt. I say yes to helping other people when I can't help myself. I say yes, hoping that this connection is going to lead to something down the road, and maybe I'll be able to benefit from it, or reach more people with my book, or there's some sort of win down the road. When it's up front, it's a loss and it's hard and I take a hit and all that. And I'm not one that has learned to set boundaries. I just don't know how. At the moment, the best I'm doing is ignoring people, which makes me feel like a jerk, but I'm literally ignoring people right now who are texting me, trying to call me, emailing me because they want my help. They want my services. They know that I've been a successful author. They want my advice, whatever. And I just ignore. And then I use as a scapegoat the fact that one of my immediate family members was in the hospital for a whole week. And then I was home for another week to help after they got out of the hospital. And I use that to as a buffer, because people tend to back off when I say, hey, I just got back from, this thing. And then, dog died on top of that. And I'm, unemployed and all these things. And then people kind of back away, but I have to basically make excuses because I haven't been able to, I like what you said here. You said, set boundaries, make hard choices, and learn to say no. And I suck at all of those.
You know what, though? I'm going to stop you for a second, because you are awesome. You are so cool. The fact that you can go on this show and talk about all those vulnerabilities, every single thing, which I have experienced myself personally, you have just said out loud. And if someone like myself, a born people pleaser, can transform the way that they do things, I know you can too. Sometimes you just say, I don't have the bandwidth. I'm really sorry. And then move on. And their reaction is none of your business. It was funny. I also am a huge believer in therapy. My older brother died 6 years ago in June. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? I need to talk to someone because this is coming out sideways. And we talked about boundaries. It was one of the major things that we needed to go over. And one of the major things I needed to improve on, especially with family and with work and with friendships and all these things. I really needed to work on it. And now it's as simple as, because I used to not self-sabotage, but I would just get so overwhelmed because people are like, Mary Beth, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to freak out. I have no time to myself. I can't do this. But you have to slow it down. Our biggest thing, Robert, I feel like you and I have a lot in common, and we go. But if we slow it down and put our family first, our needs first, whatever spirituality we have first, and feel comfortable and confident enough to say, I can't do that right now. I'm so sorry. I'm spent. I've got a ton of things on my plate, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can, I promise. Or thank you so much for your interest, but right now I'm just not able to do it. No is a complete sentence. It's okay to say no. In fact, it's self-preservation.
Yeah, I like that. Well,
but I'm cooking.
Yeah, I learned something today. So I appreciate you enlightening me on that. I do want to, I know I interjected, so I want to get back to this question. I think it's a good one because I get hit up by first-time authors or second-time authors or even New York Times bestselling authors because I've been down that road. I've had a bunch of successful books. I've been a New York Times bestseller. My book's in 9 languages, all that. So I get a lot of these questions too, but I would love to hear your response because it is a question for you as a publicist. So I'll just read it again. I know you read it earlier, but I'm a first-time vegan author. How do I get publicity? I'm not a name, so they won't even talk to me. And those who will talk to me want like $20,000 up front. Can a regular person get publicity without going broke? And how do we do that?
So I have a client, and they're not a vegan client. They're a marriage counseling / marriage. Basically, they're called Marriage 365. And they have an app, and they're trying to replace modern therapy. And they self-published a book. And when they self-publish that book, has sold 100,000 copies. So that's a big deal. They're now going back to a publisher. They saved a little bit of money. They put some money out for an agent, and that agent just secured a huge book deal for them. So I am not necessarily a book publicist in terms of how would I work with book publicists. I do book PR, but there's a strategy behind it. And how would someone who is not going to pay, $10,000 to $20,000 to get their name out there? I think the advice that I would say is that self-publish and see where it goes. But a huge element to that is, unfortunately, it takes money to make money, right? So, and everyone judges a book by its cover. It's just what it comes down to. I've read a ton of vegan books and they have been stagnant. Some of them have just not made it because they just, for one reason or another, they didn't appeal. So I think promoting it on social media, if you can get someone who would work with you on the publicity side to help promote your book, especially like you're doing. Also, Robert, you don't always have to do the in-person tours. People get so burnt out doing those media tours prior to their book launch. A lot of it can be done virtually. I was talking to a friend about that the other day. We don't need you flying from A to Z to A to Z to A to Z. A lot of it can be done. But I think it's just kind of putting one foot in front of the other and using social media as a platform to promote what you have and to get as many friends and family involved to do the same. And sending out samples. If there's a book influencer online or someone who you really respect, get in touch, DM them, say, hey, I want to send you a couple books, or I want to send you one book. Tell me what you think. And even so, for example, like already I'm thinking to myself, okay, so Robert has this new book coming out. So I know I'm in a book club that I can then have my book club order this book so we can do that for discussion. You just have to be creative. I know sounds a little bit like not an answer, but it's hard without a publicist, but it is possible. It just depends on the quality of the book. It depends on the content. It depends on the cover. It depends on, what you're using to distribute the book. Can you buy it on Amazon? I mean, all these different things. So I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, there's Mary Beth, I could have another hour-long conversation about this with you.
Yeah. Yes.
And for this individual who asked the question. And in fact, just before our call today, I gave someone a 10-point answer about publishing and marketing a book, because it's something I've had quite a bit of experience in the last 15 years, publishing books. And in fact, I should share that with you later today, just to see my perspectives. Because I mean, one thing, and for this person who asked the question, one thing you have to just acknowledge right up front is the reality of the situation, that 90% of books don't sell more than 2,000 copies. Selling books is hard with a capital H. It is hard, hard, hard. Even though I'm a New York Times bestselling author, I'm having a hard time selling my new book. It's a hard thing to do. And so I've got a ton of marketing strategies myself too. I won't share them. That question was directed for you, but I echo a lot of the things that you say too. A lot of networking collaborations. And you're right, you don't need to fly A to Z. The only reason I do is because I've been doing it for 20 years and I get all my expenses paid and I get paid to do it. And it's kind of what I do professionally. But when you're brand new, like this person, first time author, and they're new, you're not going to get paid speaking gigs. You're not going to be flown throughout the world.
Right.
I've been doing it because I've been, I used to be the world's most recognized vegan bodybuilder for a decade. So I had those opportunities to fly to Australia and China and Europe and get paid to speak and all that. And I've leveraged that experience to then build my network and contacts. And one thing I would say is go to a few events where you can network like crazy. I mean, I just recently in person, I saw Rich Roll, Lewis Howes, Nimai Delgado. Some of the biggest names, Kathy Freston, all these people, just in recent weeks. Actually, just a few days ago, I was with James Wilkes, the creator of The Game Changers, in person, having dinner, hanging out. I was with Carly Bodrug twice recently, the most successful plant-based author in the world. You can do that as a first-time author and go get your photos taken with them and have them hold your book and talk to them, or ask questions from them, or connect with them. And you never know, one of those individuals with millions of followers could put it over the edge. That's what worked with me and Rich Roll and all that, with becoming a bestseller. But on to another question. I had it written down as well, but it looks like Chef AJ has it too. I was going to ask you about your health and fitness and all that, and I already asked you about your typical day, but what you eat in a day. That is the quintessential Chef AJ show question. Yeah. No matter who you are, whether you're Joseph Blair or Mayor Beth Olson, hey.
So I recently have been trying very hard to do the gluten-free route. So that's a new development. And I feel like it helps a lot with inflammation and bloating and headaches, actually. So I've been trying to do that. I'm not perfect at all, but I wake up and gosh, it's so different every single day. I'm not always hungry in the morning. I do like to do some intermittent fasting. So I might not eat breakfast. I go to the gym. I hit it hard. I'm a coffee person. I drink my coffee, go to the gym, and then I'll come back and I'll have fruits and berries and vegan yogurt. And we just bought a new blender, which I'm super excited about, and make a ton of smoothies. I love smoothies. They, the deeper the color, the better. I have a sweet tooth also, which this becomes a problem sometimes, but I'm working on it. And I'm really lucky too. Like, for example, yesterday, Ginger Beet, who is a catering company in DC, and they actually cater nationwide, had a TV segment, and she's giving me all these leftovers, and I'm getting this cornbread. And there was a time where I would just go out with my family. We would go to Plant Burger, or we would do some Beyond Meat burgers. But I have felt like, to feel better, that's not what is fueling my body now. So I'm really going into the whole foods, plant-based realm. I eat a lot of nuts. I eat now gluten-free bread with avocado and drizzled olive oil. I know that Chef AJ is an oil fan, but we'll talk. Maybe she can give me tips on how to get rid of that. I love apples and peanut butter. I will literally eat apples and peanut butter I have no shame. I love peanut butter. It's so good. I love nut butters. We'll have vegan pizza. We have a great place around here that will deliver vegan pizza. Every day is different. Every day is different. I love hippies. I love hippies. I don't know if anyone loves hippies, but I love them. I love bowls, smoothies. It's funny. I think as a lot of women and as a bodybuilder, you'll understand this too. I've gone through phases in my life where this was before I was vegan, low carb, or, you try all these different things to fit this kind of unreasonable body shape. And when I went vegan, I'll always want to look and feel my best for sure. But there's something that you don't realize how much better you feel when you're eating fruits and veggies and stir fries and tofu. And I like soy milk. I don't know why it gets such a bad rap. You tell me. I don't know. But I mean, I really love all different kinds, and I do not restrict.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
Well, I think there's something to be said for eating healthy, whole plant-based foods as much as possible. I think sometimes, I was actually talking to one of your clients, Jenny Lawrence, about that.
Yes.
Sometimes it's the climate you're in that dictates the type of food that you eat. If you live in the cold Pacific Northwest, in Seattle or Portland, you're going to eat kind of a certain way. Or if you're upstate, Maine or New England somewhere. But if you're in Southern California or Florida, you're probably going to eat a lot more mango and fresh berries and more hydrating dark pigment fruits and just more natural whole plant foods, just because of the environment you're in. I mean, I do the same when I go to Thailand or Indonesia or the Caribbean or somewhere like that. I just tend to eat healthier, Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'd love to hear your take on this. I'm a big fan of international cuisine. In fact, when I was in Seattle, it felt like I was in Southeast Asia. I was going to Thai restaurants, Vietnamese restaurants. I mean, I went to Loving Hut, which is like my favorite, globally. There's hundreds of locations globally, 35 throughout the United States. I went to Katie Vegan Thai. I went to Araya's place, kind of another Thai fusion place. Big fan of Thai food, Ethiopian food, Indian food, Mexican food, Vietnamese, Chinese, I already said Mexican, Japanese food, all kinds of international cuisine that is very largely rice and vegetables and tofu kind of thing. So what's some of your international cuisine that you love?
You're giving me a lot of credit for being a jet setter, which this was years ago. I mean, the latest trip I went to was in Puerto Rico, and it was a hotel, and I was there with Potomac Lifestyle Magazine and doing their PR. And they had a great Mexican restaurant, and you veganize it. But there was by no means anything that was strictly like a vegan restaurant that we were able to go to. I was veganizing everything that I needed, from even like the little shop that has the little snacks to the different restaurants to the bodegas. I wish I had more information. I just am so psyched that here in the DMV, things have changed so much. There's so many awesome restaurants now. It's like super cool to be vegan.
And explain what the DMV is. That's where I go to get a driver's license.
I know, right? I know, or the MVA. You know what's funny? So it's DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I know people who say that it doesn't even make sense. So I don't even know if it's technically or accurate to even say the DMV. But in the DC metropolitan area, there are so many great restaurants. And working for clients, I mean, we'll do a food demo all the time. Like we were on Fox doing a food demo. We're doing ABC doing demos, and they all just feed me. It's like such a gift. And to be able to also work with great restaurants who have such delicious food. It's a lot. I mean, it's always a possibility. You're always able to do it. If you open my fridge now, you would see so much fruit, vegan yogurt. I love sprouts. I know that sounds very, very like stereotypical vegan, like, oh, lettuce and sprouts. But I love sprouts with hummus and a good wrap, and chickpeas and all that stuff.
Oh, that's great. I know we're running short on time, Mary Beth, but I do have a couple of maybe rapid fire questions we could just go through. First answer that comes to mind, and these may not be super short answers, but if you can try to come up with something that like this is my response. I'm first, and then we just got a few minutes left. Chef AJ will come back on, and we'll thank you and let people know where to find you online. And if they want to inquire about your services, your publicity services, marketing services, I know you've said no 4 times this month, but if you've got room on your plate to say yes to somebody, we'll find out your contact info, website one more time for the listeners. But I want to go back to the first question I asked you. If you can sum this up as succinctly, quickly as possible, why is marketing so hard?
Because you got a lot of competition.
Okay. How much does awareness lead to change? Marketing brings awareness. Publicity brings awareness. How often or how much does that lead to behavior change?
I'd say 80% of the time, or even 90% of the time, and then sometimes you get some fallback.
Okay.
Right. Get some people fall off. Yeah.
What tools best promote and market veganism to the mainstream audience?
What tools? Press releases, media alerts, pitches, all that stuff.
Great. Are you going to be at the Plant-Based World Expo at the Javits Center in New York City in September?
I'm not. I have a wedding, unfortunately, but I'll be there in spirit.
Okay, because I might be there. I thought maybe I'd bump into you because it's a place with a bunch of plant-based businesses. Last question. Do you have any funny stories related to pitching media, like something like that, didn't go as planned, or you accidentally sent it to the wrong person, or you called someone by the wrong name, or anything that, like, we all do that sometimes, right? I email the wrong person. Oops. Or I spell someone's name wrong in my book when I sign it for them. Like, oops. Do you have any funny stories in your publicity world?
I do. And you know what? This is just how vulnerable I'm going to let myself be with you, Robert, because you've shown me that you can be vulnerable too. Okay. Years ago, I worked for an agency, and it said Mary Beth Wood is my maiden name. So you'll see on the screen, it should say Olson, but it says Wood. Mary Beth Wood, and underneath there, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. It said Director of Pubic Relations instead of Director of Public Relations.
Wow.
It was a big F up, right? It was a huge F up.
I gotta say.
Mortified. It was a long time ago. And you know what? I was like, okay, I'm either going to cry or I'm going to laugh about it. And I did a little bit of both.
Well, someone just recently called me Robert Cheese, and I'm a vegan, so I just turned the other cheek. But Mary
And
Beth.
media will come back too sometimes and say, I eat meat, I like it, please take me off. And I'm like, okay, well, I just emailed you personally. I'm not blasting you with emails, but whatever.
Right. Well, Mary Beth, it's been great chatting with you, learning from you, being inspired by you. Can you tell us again, you got DC Veg Week coming up. It's just for people who tuned in later, which we talked about at the beginning. Quickly tell us about DC Veg Week again, because it's right around the corner, and then where we can find you online, on your website, on social media.
DC Veg Week is taking place from the 6th to the 12th here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And it's the celebration of all things vegan and all things vegan cuisine. We have a big launch event that you could buy tickets for, although we only have a couple left. If you go to DC Veg Week on Instagram, you will see all the information and you can find links. For me, you can go to MBO_media on Instagram. That's the best mode of communication. You could also go to MBO or www.mymbomedia.com.
All right. Well, Mary Beth, it's been a pleasure. I think we'll get Chef AJ back here in a moment. And in fact, we do have Chef AJ back.
I'm right here, Mr. Cheese. And I got the funniest text from Linda, who, she said, why isn't my book on your bookshelf? And the reason it isn't is because I'm mailing the advanced reader copy out to you tomorrow. Mary Beth has one.
Yeah, I don't have one yet. I was telling Charles it would be on here. And in fact, I almost put your unprocessed one on here. I have it over on my other shelf. I cycle through all these, but yes.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
But it really is going out in the mail tomorrow. So thank you. Mary Beth, maybe you could write a book like Vegan Publicity for Dummies or something.
We'll see. I don't know. My goal is just to get enough sleep at night. I go day by day with these little ones.
Nice. Well, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Cheese.
Thank you, Mr. Cheese.
It's been my pleasure. I'm trying to think of another cheese.
That is hilarious. I love it. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time for plant-based cardiologist, Dr. Monica Agarwal. Everything you need to know about heart disease. Take care, everyone.